So today we're talking about Asian carp invading waters in western Kentucky and the management practices that have been implemented and possible solutions to this invasive species. Well, Asian carp is the collective name for bighead, black grass, and silver carp. They were introduced into America by aquatic farms, canal systems, and sewage treatment plants that use them as a form of weed and algae control. Along with live bait fishing has helped move them from water body to water body, because young silver carp are easily confused with some common bait fish. Now, the carp have been released from aquatic farms and sewage treatment facilities during high water events and floods that would allow them to escape the ponds they're in. And they move through canal systems through locks, and silver carp can just jump over physical barriers too, so they can spread through that. And they've made their way into Kentucky by the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. Now they can be found in significant populations in our western rivers and backwater lakes, including the Tennessee River, Cumberland River, and there's really large populations that are really hurting us in Lake Barkley and Kentucky Lake. Asian carp can cause a variety of problems to our economy. They're a threat to human health and a major threat to our native ecology. They outcompete native fish populations for their normal habitats. They just overconsume food sources, and their sheer population can just push other fish out of their natural living space, because a single Asian carp female can produce over 1 million eggs a year. Bighead and silver carp eat plankton, which mussel and fish populations depend on, so they can starve by being outcompeted by these fish. Grass carp eat plants and can destroy shoreline vegetation, which can affect cover and native spawning locations for native fish populations, which can further stress their ability to survive in these waters. Black carp eat mussels and snails, which many are already endangered or heavily stressed due to pollutants in our waters and changes in velocity of our rivers. And all of these can cause significant economic damage in western Kentucky, because they're cutting down on our sport fish populations, which is a big pull to come into the land between the lakes region, which is Lake Barkley and Kentucky Lake. They're also a danger to people that are on the waters. Like in this picture on the right, this is a picture of an electric fishing boat on Lake Barkley zapping the water, and these are all silver carp jumping out of the water, and kind of just represent how many of these fish are actually in this lake. Far too many. These silver carp can weigh over 20 pounds and jump over 10 feet out of the water and can demolish boats, heavily damaging them. They can really hurt a person too. So the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources is the state's authority involved in controlling these Asian carp invasions. They started off by enacting restrictions for live fish selling and transport, along with further grass carp use for aquatic plant control and sewage treatment, or along canals or aquatic farms. The reason that these restrictions on live fish transport was important is because if you look at this picture, a young silver carp is really similar to these common bait fish like the shad, and we really don't want people collecting bait fish from one water source and then using them in another, because if it's a silver carp and it escapes your line, you could start breeding populations in a new body of water, and that could start hurting that habitat also. They've also released 4 crews along the Ohio River that monitor carp movements weekly and try to remove as many carp as possible, trying to prevent them from moving between different lock areas up the Ohio River, and preventing them from moving further into our tributaries and accessing new rivers in Kentucky. They've also started a variety of campaigns to foster economic interest in using carp as a source of revenue in Kentucky, which we'll get on a little bit later. So one event that the department started was Carp Madness. It was an event they hosted in 2013. It was the first freshwater commercial fishing tournament in the U.S. ever hosted, and It offered $20,000 in prizes split between the best collectors of fish based off of weight. It took place in Lake Barkley and Kentucky Lake, and this was a big deal because commercial fishing normally isn't allowed on either of these lakes. And in just the 2 days of the tournament, these commercial fishermen caught over 82,000 pounds of Asian carp with minimal sport fish casualties. And this tournament really proved how Asian carp could be selectively collected without harming the native fish populations too awful much. Like, they could be specifically fished for. In 2018, they hosted Carp Madness 2, the bow fishing edition. So it focused on more sports fishermen, and it included both of those lakes along with the Cumberland and Tennessee rivers. In the 2 days of the tournament, they caught over 16,000 pounds just by bow, with an additional 3,000 to 5,000 pounds of silver carp just jumping into the boats being spooked by the fishermen. And both of these showed two effective ways to help lower and control these carp populations. It may not be enough individually in just these ways, but it was like good support to show the government and the people that this could be an economic point for the state, along with a good way to protect our ecology. Something that's been really popular in the news recently with Kentucky trying to prevent further spread of these Asian carp is this bioacoustic fish fence that they're trying to install at the Barkley Dam on Lake Barkley. And its goal is to prevent further carp movement through the locks. That way, if they are able to eliminate or remove carp from Lake Barkley, more won't escape from the Cumberland River into the lake. So that way we can actually make some progress with the fish population. The BAFF consists of a riverbed bubbler, which from this picture you can see is going to be massive, and a sound system. The sound emitted deters fish from passing through it, and it's currently used in Europe to herd fish around water intakes and dams. Really helps to minimize casualties and salmon moving, and it also should cost less in maintenance because it requires less maintenance than a physical barrier, since it's not directly like banging up against fish that are trying to get past it. So any reasonable solution is going to have to involve commercial fishing to diminish a reasonable Asian carp population in Kentucky, because it's going to be an expensive and long-term process, and currently the department in charge isn't getting a lot of government funding to control it, and shouldn't expect a whole lot more, I believe. And it would involve a lot of money for a very long time for them to be able to efficiently control this without any profitable business using these fish. The real differences in these solutions I'm going to talk about are the choices in the products made from Asian carp and the markets that are going to be targeted by these products. And any choice chosen would help boost the state and the national economy, since it would just add a new business and industry into western Kentucky. So the first solution would be to market Asian carp as a national food source. It's a healthy source of protein. Fish usually have less fat than beef, and they contain omega-3 fatty acids, which are supposed to be very beneficial to our health. It'd be a very cheap food source to provide to the poor, and just to anybody. It should be a good alternative if somebody wants seafood, just because there's so many there, and it's unwanted currently, so it doesn't have a high demand in America, making it cheap. The problems with this is we don't have a good cultural view on eating carp currently, and that could be something that's difficult to overcome, because a lot of people confuse these with our native bottom-feeding carp, which we don't eat because no one really enjoys eating a bottom feeder, when in reality none of these Asian carp are bottom feeders. And Asian carp contain intramuscular bones, which are small bones found within the tissues and stuff. And they're not common in American seafood dishes. They're kind of annoying to eat around. They're sharp if you bite onto one, if you've ever tried like a grass carp. You just have to fillet them out. And it's possible, it just takes a little more effort. Kind of seen in the picture on the right. And to make this a national food source, it would need significant campaigning to begin a change in public view, which would be a long, expensive process, and you'd have to find some kind of commercial vendor that would be willing to take on this campaigning effort. Another choice is to make non-food products out of these Asian carp. Fish emulsion is one product we can make out of these, which is an organic fertilizer and uses the entire fish in production. Only problems with it is it smells absolutely terrible if you've ever worked with fish emulsion, so people probably wouldn't want to use it in their gardens. It just doesn't have a very good appeal when you're spreading it. It looks really gross, it sticks to things. Not great like that. Another product is fish meal, which is ground up fish and dried and used as a food source for livestock and pets. And another product that could be made out of Asian carp is fish oil, which is a very popular supplement in the U.S. You've probably heard about it and seen articles on the internet about it. It's high in omega-3 and is supposed to have several different health benefits. If those are true or untrue, I don't know. But very popular, very good market. Only problem is these markets already have established fish sources in America and may not use enough fish in Kentucky to be an effective population control alone. It would have to be like a temporary solution while we try to market it to the U.S. population as a food source or be supplemented in some other way. Now, my recommended solution that I believe would be the most effective at removing these fish, allowing for native populations to regrow, and also just bringing really good industry to Western Kentucky would be to market these fish internationally. Because Asian carp are already a Chinese delicacy, and they've already overfished their local population to the point where they're asking America to send them live Asian carp so that they can repopulate their own rivers. And they have a significantly continuous growing population, so they're just going to have an increasing demand for these fish as they overfish their waters and have more people that want them. We wouldn't have to make any more advertising for local markets because there would be enough demand just to ship it overseas. Like currently there's an Illinois plant that has a contract to export 30 million pounds of fish to China, and they still want more. So there's plenty of this market open to start collecting these fish and shipping them overseas. The number of Chinese consumers probably exceeds the number of fish we have in our lakes and rivers, so we could fish them all and still have a demand. So I believe that this would be our best solution and could be a long-term industry for Western Kentucky that could possibly spread further through Kentucky as a good new economic source to replace some of our agricultural practices.